vote tomorrow on legislation that will make it easier for landlords to evict some residents who have not paid rent. In some cases, those residents owe tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, the move is aimed at rolling back protections for low income residents put in place during the COVID pandemic.
There always seems to be some kind of buffer with these articles, but there's some good news coming out of DC, and I imagine that this is going to start spreading all across the country. Is that as the migrant situation explodes and these cities have to find housing for them, you're going to find that many of these governments, and you're seeing that DC is now getting a sense of some common sense. And they're saying they're going to allow the landlords, or at least the sentiment is that the landlords should be able to evict these people that don't pay rent. I know it sounds nonsensical that you should be able to put someone out if they're not paying you rent. But in many of these cities, that has been the case where people could more or less professionally squat in your house. They move in with no intention of continuing to pay rent. They move in, get in, and they know that the government will have their back where they don't have to pay the rent. And in this case, we are seeing that the momentum is somewhat shifting in our favor here. We're seeing that a very liberal government is choosing to at least consider putting forth a law to allow landlords to evict their tenants. Let's see if we can get this article to play. We have to refresh this article. 1 second. If not, I'll read the article for you. I think it's some very good news. And I think, again, that this is going to spread primarily because the cities need to have some way to house the migrants. And the only way people are going to be willing to house the migrants is if they can put them out if they don't pay. And that's the way I think things are headed. Let's see if we can play this article, this video again. Well, while that is winding up here, I have a couple articles that I wanted to, but first I'll just read this article. Let's see, maybe it's playing now.
Is aimed at rolling back protections for low-income residents put in place during the COVID pandemic. And as News 4's Mark Seagraves reports, Mayor Bowser says landlords are facing more than $100 million in unpaid rent just for this year alone.
$100 million unpaid rent. And this article is just going to give us the blues.
The district has invested hundreds of millions of dollars over the past 10 years, creating affordable housing for low-income residents.
$100 million invested to create affordable housing, and they still have none. I guess they should invest another 100 million, 200 million, $1 billion more. Maybe they'll have some affordable housing, but at what cost, you might ask yourself. And this video is just not going to play ball with us. So we'll take a look at the article instead. DC lawmakers will vote Tuesday, which is today, on legislation that will make it easier for landlords to evict tenants who haven't paid rent. I mean, that just sounds like common sense, doesn't it? And in some cases, owe tens of thousands of dollars. I have several friends in this situation. The proposed legislation rolls back some protections DC put in place for low-income residents.
Now, Mayor Bowser and Council Chairman Phil Mendelson say
we're not going to hear much of this video. The proposed legislation, let me see if I can close some tabs down. Maybe that'll help you guys out. I'll close a tab or two. I'll close this tab. See if I can close maybe this tab. And maybe that'll help that video play. Meanwhile, I'll keep reading on here. The proposed legislation stems from the COVID pandemic. Currently, the law protects tenants from eviction each time they apply for the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Imagine that. Every time you go to evict someone, if they go and apply for this ERAP program for help, that protection exists even if tenants are not approved for assistance. So at that point, it's kind of like bankruptcy. You file bankruptcy, all your debtors have to freeze and stand still. Mayor Bowser said as many as 20% of renters in DC are not paying each month. 20% of people in DC are not paying rent each month. Amazing. What does that do to the rest of the people that have to pay rent? You imagine that the price is going up. And the terms are going up. And the strictness of who you would allow in your home, knowing that 20% of the people, you put 100 marbles in a bag, and 20 of those marbles are people that aren't going to pay their rent. You're going to have to raise the cost on everyone because that's a lot of bad marbles, a lot of poison in that poisonous marbles, costing landlords hundreds of millions of dollars. Yes, that is true. Landlords are facing more than $100 million in unpaid rent for 2024 alone. And 2024 is not even over yet. How they calculate that, I wasn't asked if I was short any money on rent. So how they calculate this is probably just an estimate of the large landlords. They're not calculating the harm done to the smaller landlords, the people who can't afford to hire lawyers and put these people out. Now we have a serious problem. Now, of all time, they figured out right in time for the migrant crisis, we are at risk of losing that affordability. And once we lose those affordability covenants, they're gone. And here's the root problem. We have about $100 million, as this slide shows, in unpaid rent to affordable housing providers. The people are not paying rent to affordable housing providers. And if things don't change, that number will skyrocket to $150 million by next year. Bowser said. Bowser is the mayor. So she knows that she has some undesirables. And she's had laws in place to protect these undesirables. The 20%. 20% is a very large number of people not paying rent in a city this size. That's a large number. And the fact that the DC government has allowed these people to get away with the punishment, the consequences of not paying rent, has caused the rent to go up for everyone. Because if I can't pick the poison out of the bag, I got to assume they're all poison. And they're going to get the terms of the most poisonous tenant, unless they have money, a lot of money up front. To mitigate some of the risks, DC Council Chair Phil Mendelson, he's the white guy, by the way, proposed legislation that would remove the COVID-era law that protects ERAP tenants from eviction. The crisis is especially hurting affordable housing providers, which affects both the maintenance of current affordable housing projects as well as the prospect of creating more affordable housing units. So what they're saying is that the poor people, the people who were given the affordable housing opportunities in this city, are destroying the prospects for the future poor people who desire and need affordable housing units. So again, this problem is created by poor people with low morals, not paying their landlords, and the landlord saying, I'm not building any more for you poor people. You don't pay. The only way I'm going to build more housing for you poor people is if the government allow me to throw you out quickly. If you don't pay your rent, these people are the cause of their own problem. They are the cause for rent going up for everyone. 20% of the population not paying their rent? What? Amazing. And laws to protect them for the last 5 years or however long since the pandemic? Amazing. Is it a bug or a feature, I ask? Dean Hunter, who represents small and individual landlords, who have complained it's too hard to evict tenants who don't pay their rent. And that was prior to COVID. So they need a lot of rolling back here. This has had a devastating impact on the vision of affordable housing in the District of Columbia. I've been telling people that for years. You make it hard to evict, the prices will go up. And if we don't get ahead of it, we're looking at a real disaster. Sir, the disaster is already here. DC leaders said that the number of applications for ERAP is more than double in the past year. If the legislation is passed, funding for ERAP will continue, so they can continue to dole out money, free money to people who don't pay their rent. But the tenants will have to provide proof of financial hardship, and ERAP will only protect tenants from eviction for a short time. So things aren't getting better, but they're moving in the right direction. At least they are acknowledging. That 20% of these people have no scruples or no ability to live in this city. And the government should house them, right? For the sake of everyone else. So they're going to drive the prices up for everyone. I don't want anybody to leave this room thinking that we're talking about one more evictions. Well, if someone isn't paying, isn't that what's needed? You need evictions. If people don't pay, that's the only way you're going to get to a more normal housing price is if you allow the trash to be cleared out so that someone else can come in and take advantage of that opportunity for affordable housing. But if you let someone squat in that place and don't pay rent, they're taking up a unit that could be provided to someone that needs that place and willing to pay for it. But if you protect the people who don't want to pay their rent, these are also the people that are likely going to destroy the place. And now you're going to have less of what you want. And so that was the end of that article. One more article or two I wanted to share with you, but since we could not see the video, I'll share a couple tabs with you. These are the links of DC talking about strengthening their housing, tightening their housing policies. And I wonder how much of this is due to the migrant influx, in that they are a better quality of tenants. And if you have a bad native-born American black tenant, in this case in DC, and you wanted to get that person out because there are a lot of people here now that has the government funding and they're going to get out of your house when you ask them to, they're going to be better tenants all around. I'm talking about the migrants. Then somebody is likely putting pressure on DC government to do something like this, to start to tighten the housing policies. Here's a tweet from MDRC News. DC Council aims to tighten housing policies as unpaid changes come at a time of crisis for the city's affordable housing sector. Now, I've been saying again, I think a lot of this has to do with the migrants coming into the city, adding additional pressure to the housing demand in these cities. And there really is no other way to deal with it. DC does not have housing projects the way that New York City and other cities have. So they don't have a lot of housing projects. So they don't have the capacity to put these people in housing projects. And I think it would be a tinderbox anyway if you were to introduce these people to a primarily black environment, which DC is in housing projects. So they're going to have to get Section 8, and I've explained to you how that will work. And better yet, I'll give you an example of how this Section 8 is I don't know what happened here. Seven still, were you able to hear the last bit of this stream? Anyway, so let me get back to Springfield. What I think will happen here in Springfield is that we're going to see situations like this right here. I think I lost my connection for a brief second there. And here's what's happening in Springfield, which I think is what will happen here. We'll take a look at this here. And here are the residents complaining that they're being displaced for the migrants. And here we go.
To help homeless people. And 22 families got kicked out. Are living in a tent city. We're starting to become a big city, the amount of people that are here. We're going to wind up being the next Detroit because we're going to be bankrupt. Where's the extra highway state patrol with all the accidents that we have? I don't see them out on the street. Right down where I work, I've seen 4 accidents in 1 week. And nobody charged with anything.
Why are these people being coddled and pampered and given us a beautiful life, a life better than I live?
The internet connection is shaky this morning. Let me see if I can get to the...
Off my tax dollars. And then they want to turn around and start hating on us and calling us racist? There's something really wrong with that picture. We took on a problem from a third world country that is not our problem. Why are we taking care of this and supporting this? You know, why don't these people go home and fight for their own countries they seem so proud of? There was a whole bunch of things sent out to the Haitian community to be able to vote, but they caught on to it. You know, there's a bunch of scandalous things going on in our town.
Thank you for your time, Wes Babian. I want to say thank you to Springfield, who's had to endure the bomb threats, the hate, the.
And in one of these interviews, one of the residents explained that tenants were being replaced for the migrants to live. The payments to the government is much more, and the tenants that were once living there are being replaced for migrants again because the payment is a little more. And again, here's another tweet. And I'll see if I can find this here. Again, coming out of Springfield, was just explaining to you what I think is going to happen in real estate all across America as the migrants become the preferred tenants to rent to. They're going to have the jobs. Clearly, we've shown how they're making concessions for them to be police officers. They're working in factories and things like that. And they're going to have the jobs. They're going to have the money, and they are going to be the preferred tenants there. And I'll move on to Airbnb. Here's something interesting coming out of Airbnb. You know, I've been a big critic of Airbnb, and I think, you know, the policies, if you follow Airbnb's policies to a T, more than likely, you're going to lose out, and the guests and the Airbnb business, they will do very well. And so here's a couple articles I want to share with you about Airbnb and where I think things are going. Here's a couple complaints and criticisms about Airbnb. I'll share this one first. And I think you should be able to see this screen here where it says, what does it say? My listings on Airbnb got suspended today because I rejected to host a guest with a service dog. The request is from my tiny house listing, and there is simply no space for two people and an animal to roam around. The guest says she didn't report this to Airbnb, so Airbnb basically pulled that information from the chat and decided to suspend my account with a hostile email. I'm truly sick of this platform and the way they treat us hosts. Superhost. I've been hosting for 9 years. Superhost since the day they started that program. 4.99 rating on my listing. And this is the treatment what I get without even reaching out to me before acting on it. I'm going to maximize this just in case you can't see it. Let me see if I can find that tab. I want you to be able to read this. And I don't know if I can maximize it anymore. I think I can. Let's see. I can. This person complains they've been a Superhost 4.99 rating on my listing, and this is the treatment what I get without even reaching out to me before acting on it. I'm completely shocked. At this point, I'm ready to leave Airbnb and this business behind because of Airbnb and their hostile environment against hosts. And see, again, this is what I keep telling people, like, the Airbnb business, like, it is no different than Uber, no different than Lyft, DoorDash. If you are driving Uber, DoorDash, you probably are complaining that you're dancing to the beat of Airbnb, of Uber's policies, and they're canceling, suspending you, sending you shit rides and passengers all the time. And the same thing with Airbnb. You see here, this is a person with a 4.99 rating, Superhost. One guest with a service dog. She didn't want to accept the service dog for whatever reason, and they suspended her. She should know that this is not a business. This is not a sustainable business. Now, toward the end of this message, she says, at this point, I'm ready to leave Airbnb and this business behind. As I keep saying, if you have the property, you don't need Airbnb. You just need to figure out a way to get around Airbnb because their policies. And today, this morning, I wake up to get an email that one of my reservations was canceled. And I said, well, what the hell happened? Everyone got the check-in instructions and the guests couldn't find the property. And he says, I can't find the property. And they canceled it and blamed it on me. And that cancellation would cost me about $100 or so. Again, if that person was my customer, he wouldn't get a refund. He would have had to call me and figure out how to find the place or cancel his reservation at penalty of no refund. But he was Airbnb's customer. And so in this case, Airbnb canceled him and punished me. It's a win-win for Airbnb because they still kept their customer. They paid him, or they provided the service for him. Maybe they put him in another room, made the money from him, and then took $100 from me because of the guests reported to them that he couldn't find the house. Whatever the reason was. Again, that's Airbnb's policy, and I have to abide by it. And this Airbnb host, she has to abide by it too. And she probably was surprised to know that Airbnb reads your messages. And they have AI to crawl those messages. It should not be a surprise to her, but she knows today. And, I've had this similar issue in that we had guests that were during January 6th and all that. They were demanding that I shut down my Airbnbs, I guess during the inauguration day. And they went around to all the Airbnb hosts in neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. They sent booking requests, and it wasn't a real booking request. They just wanted you to shut your Airbnb down, and they asked you kindly, and if you didn't do it, they would go to Airbnb, and Airbnb eventually shut everyone down during that period in DC for the inauguration. So let me see if I can find one more article about Airbnb. And this is where I think Airbnb is going. I've shown you guys the type of tenants, the guests or whatever that will come to an Airbnb. And for you people that still are very dependent on Airbnb, I think this is a positive for you. I don't think you will be able to get around Airbnb being a very, very rapacious middleman. As you make more, they're going to eat more from you. And that ultimately is the downside of having a middleman with the ability to deploy technology against you, AI being one of them. Here's another article. Let's see if this is the correct article here. And it is. Let's see if I can show you the headline. Airbnb hosts are secretly stalking your social media before confirming bookings. I've long thought that Airbnb or Facebook would be some kind of credit score facility where you can easily measure the credit score of someone based upon what they write or say on Facebook and things like that. And what's interesting, before I go too far, I just got a message from a guy, Airbnb again, and I guess I can show you this message. Let me see if you can see it on screen. And you may or may not be able to see this message. But this is an Airbnb guest, and he has been extending day by day. I'm not sure if you can see that. Day by day for about 3 weeks now. Day after day after day, he gets up in the morning. Let's see, it's 9:30 now. And he wants to request an additional day. And I think I'll show you that if I can show you without showing you too much information. Give me 1 second. I'm going to show you that. Let me just blur out some of this stuff here. And so this is kind of what I say that a lot of these people are living day by day in Airbnbs, and you can kind of easily tip off their behavior and raise your prices, as I've been telling you that I've been doing every day. This guy, he books with me, and he's been, again, extending day by day by day. And I'm going to send this to my email. I share this picture with you. Give me 1 second. Here we are. There it is. And here's this picture of this guy. And it literally just came through. And I'll show that in a second. But Airbnb hosts are secretly stalking your social media before confirming bookings. When you make a booking for travel, A hotel, you get an instant confirmation. Airbnbs always aren't so simple if you don't have instant booking on. You request to stay, and then the guest has the option to say yay or nay. This article isn't technically correct, but I think this is what is ultimately going to happen. People that don't have reviews and stuff like that, they can't instant book on Airbnb. But now Airbnb hosts are going to the Airbnb guests' Facebook profile to kind of ascertain a little bit more information as to who's coming into their home. Again, with Airbnb, you don't have a business. You can't ask any questions about the person before they book your place if you have instant booking on. Well, hosts are trying to go around that by looking on Airbnb and seeing if they can, on Facebook, and seeing if they can find more information. And in this article, I'll put the article in the chat for anyone interested in reading this article. This lady found out that there was going to be a party at her place by looking on Airbnb and found on Facebook and finding invitations and announcements for a party. You'll see that. And there it was, an advertisement on the Airbnb guest's Facebook profile for a party. The intention was clear. The party was to take place in the lady's cottage. So she declined the request. Now, I have friends that will ask for your full name before they allow you to check in. So if you book their property and they say, hey, if you have something like a fake name in your Airbnb profile, and amazingly enough, Airbnb allows someone to have a fake name in their profile, or not even a full name. Now, these people are coming into your homes. They could do thousands of dollars of damage, but they don't even have to give you the full name. You can see just some of the people. I wish I could find some of the people in my Airbnb calendar, and you could just see some of the names. Matter of fact, I could show you a picture. I'll show you a picture of an Airbnb guest. This is her profile picture. And of course, she didn't have a name, but that was her profile picture. So clearly, you're going to want to try your best to figure out a way to avoid letting this person in your home. And Airbnb hosts are now going to Facebook to do kind of a little social credit check on these people to see if there is sufficient in quality and character to stay in their homes. And there's one more thing I wanted to cover with you guys. Here's something interesting. Again, coming out of DC, the rent, and it shows you how bad the problem is with the people not paying rent here in DC. Here's a guy saying the amount of unpaid rent at his DC properties is 75% higher than at his properties just a few miles away in suburban Maryland. Maryland, even though it is a very liberal bastion, it is much easier to evict people than DC. And so that is one of the things here that ultimately I think, and we talked about this the other day, is that it is causing Maryland, Montgomery County property values to rise because they have a little bit tougher eviction rates, and the DC is very, very liberal. At some point, the housing prices will go opposite of the rents. The rents will continue to be very expensive, but the housing prices could be affected. And so we covered that there. Anyway, so this has been a very informative stream, I think, for you guys. I'm giving you some pros and cons of Airbnb, people getting suspended, having their businesses turned upside down because of the policies of Airbnb. And as I said, if you are strictly an Airbnb host, then you don't have a business. You are the host for Airbnb's business. You are their whipping boy. Just like the Uber drivers are the whipping boys for Uber. You go on an Uber chat on Facebook or something, all they're doing is complaining, but they get up every morning and keep driving because they're in the kind of on the treadmill in the feedback loop that they can't get out, but they realize that it's not a good business. It's not even a business. Again, you don't have a business if you don't have your own policies, cancellation policies, check-in policies, things like that. Airbnb sets the policies. It's Airbnb's business. You don't have a business, by and large, dealing with Airbnb because they can close you down tomorrow. And if you don't believe it, look at the email I sent you. We'll pull it back up for effect here. And you tell me if you would shut your own business down if this happened to you. And if you wouldn't do that, then it is proof that you, as an Airbnb host, you do not have a business connection to the internet again. You look at this. A lady rated 4.99 on Airbnb, and an AI bot read a message between her and not even a guest, a potential guest. The lady never stayed in her house, and her listings were suspended, her income impacted. Now, this did not hurt Airbnb one bit, but her listings, and this is plural here, which means she probably has more than one, were all suspended. And Airbnb will do that for discrimination. This is discrimination against a service dog. And anyone that's a landlord or an Airbnb host, the rules for service dogs are so lax, anyone can have them. People pull up with pit bulls, dogs that they know are not service dogs by any means, but you can't turn them away if they say that it is a service dog. This woman didn't have policies. She didn't have a business. And she realized that when Airbnb basically closed her down. Airbnb allowed her to come on their platform and basically be a servant for them. And when she didn't follow their rules, they kicked her off of their platform. She never had a business. Again, I go back. She was a super host. A lot of people talk about super chats. These businesses come up with all these schemes, these vanity-plated schemes to make you feel like you need to be in their ecosystem so that they can get a cut, a larger and larger cut of your money. And then they deploy technology against you that arbitrarily cuts you off at your knees. Technology is so basically unable to discern between good and bad hosts. They didn't knock the lady off the platform. 4.99 rating. It's damn near perfect. Well, anyway, I just wanted to get that out because a lot of people look at Airbnb as a blessing, as a godsend. And I think you need to look at Airbnb as just one channel for your business. It very well could be good to start off. I think it will help you gain some traits and qualities in terms of making your listings appeal to the eye. You know, it'll focus you on the social media aspect of presenting your listings to appeal to the eye. And I think that will translate well on other platforms. If you go on Facebook, Craigslist, the same pictures, the look and feel of your places will make your places just as sellable there. And you can use your Airbnb reviews to justify to people that are wary on Craigslist, people that are wary on Facebook. You know, here's an example of thing. I'm giving you some inside baseball here. Oftentimes, I was on a call the other day, on the stream the other day, and a guy calls in. He was at the airport, and he says, "Hey, I want to rent a room." And he saw the ad on Facebook. Now, this guy didn't trust me from Adam. He just arrived in the country. He's from some Muslim country. And I said, "Hey, you can pay me directly, Cash App, or here the link to my listings. Go on Airbnb, but they're going to charge you about 30% more. It's up to you." He chose to pay me directly. But the Airbnb link legitimized me in his eyes because Airbnb, people trust Airbnb as a big business. Who am I? I'm just John Galt. But when he sees the Airbnb listings, and then he compares the prices, and he says, "You know what? I'll go directly with you because I saw your Airbnb listings and I can trust you." So that is another way that I think that you can use your Airbnb listings to more or less legitimize your business and not be so dependent on Airbnb. Because again, 30% goes to them, just like a super chat. And so again, I hope you have found this information beneficial. I'll go through some of the comments real quick. Amy Stuffings, good morning. Good morning. DC and Cali, they don't. There is a sentiment among the people that they don't have to pay rent. That is very true. And that sentiment, I think really punishes the people who don't make a lot of money and willing to pay their rent to the best of their ability. I've shown you text messages. A lady had a miscarriage and broke her leg, and she was still out here trying to pay her rent. And it's unfair to her to allow people who don't even put the effort in to pay rent to take up a space that she could legitimately use and it make her life cheaper. That's my thoughts. It's my experience on that. Get around Airbnb to get to that is correct. Man, since you mentioned that, I probably shouldn't show this to you, but I'm not even going to tell you what it is. I'll let you see for yourself. And you'll see kind of what, this is just a suggestion for you people. It's not what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to do it. But a lot of times we talk to our guests and, they'll reach out to us and they send us messages and things like that. We used to have a gateway on our internet, and we would have a gateway of people that would, when they logged on to the internet. And so we end up tracking the people, and we would end up getting a lot of their contact information. Now, you're not supposed to get their contact information as an Airbnb guest and use it to solicit. And we didn't, but there are ways around it. I'll let you guys figure it out for yourself. But we capture a lot of our guests' data. When they check in, you get a lot of information from your guests. Now, Airbnb will zero out that information once the reservation is over. So when you get a confirmed reservation, you get the phone number, you get the name, and all of that stuff. So that's the phone number and that's the name. You figure out, you do with it what you like. You can always ask them, hey, if you'd like us to contact you for whatever, leave your name, phone number here. You can have sign-up boards, things like that. But you want to get that information to make them your customers and not Airbnbs, because many people would love to go around the middleman, the guest and the host, and it's your job because you're the one with the product to sell, to provide the avenue to buy your product. Anyway, I'll finish up on these comments here. Hit the like button. I do agree with that. Geek Mike says hit the like button. We did lose a little audio for a second, but again, just to recap, DC and I think a lot of other cities are going to tighten up on these non-payment of rent tenants because they need the housing for the migrants. That's my thought. 7 still profound information, and the dogs will destroy your property. I've had dogs. It's always the doors. I have so much problem with doors. An untrained dog will scratch on your doors down at the bottom of doors. And so now your door has to be replaced because it looks so terrible. You probably could fix it, but it's cheaper to just replace the door. And you're stuck with the bill that is true. There's a process with Airbnb. You can go and you can request your money back, but you got to take pictures. You got to show proof that you fixed it, and it's a timeline with that. And then they may or may not pay you. You could, honestly not get paid. If you didn't fill out the payment process correctly and all that kind of stuff, then again, it's not your tenant or guest. If he did that, if a guest destroyed something in my house, he'd have to pay for it immediately. I wouldn't have to fill out a form, go to Airbnb, a mediator, and let them do it. Oh, well, I would just basically tell them, hey, man, you got to fix my door. But with Airbnb, oh, I'm back. I think the internet is really bad here today, probably because of the storm. We're getting some rain here in DC, probably the remnants of the rain from down in North Carolina. He gets all your cash up front. Yeah, I prefer to pay the rent. Oh, you say at least be a pimp and be on. During COVID, we had, and I think it's still going on. Most of these places where these people weren't paying rent during COVID, they just took advantage of the situation. that had been exacerbated during the COVID, but because the courts and things like that were closed. I think, and again, even in this article, they didn't roll it back to something to fix the pre-COVID issue. They just fixed the COVID issue. I think it's a step in the right direction. I doubt they will have the wherewithal to go further than this, though, and allow people to shorten the period of time that people can be evicted. I think it needs to be about 60 days. If you haven't paid your rent in 60 days, if you're behind, you should have to go, period, point blank. There shouldn't be all this court days and required mediation. But that's my thoughts. Anyway, thank you for joining. Please comment in the chat or in the comments there, and like and subscribe, and go over to our other channel. We're still streaming live here, and HB Twin has it going, and I'll be over there shortly. Thank you again for joining.